A little after 7:03.
That's new.
Feedback.
We are being broadcast live this evening. We will be recorded for rebroadcast. I need to know if anyone's making a recording of this meeting also. No, okay. The first item on the agenda was a 7 o'clock continued public hearing from Masad Family LLC, 34 and 50 Faith Avenue. We did receive a written request from the engineering firm asking for a continuance until our meeting on June 22nd. It's my understanding that Glenn Kowalski is now the wetlands consultant on this project, and I thought we were going to get a lot of materials this evening from what he described. They were wondering if they could deliver materials. Could we hear him tonight, or should they just ask for a continuance? And so I thought there was going to be information here, but no information, and they've simply sent a written request asking for a continuance. So might there be a motion?
Yes, I would move to continue the public hearing for Masad Family LLC Notice of Intent to January 22nd
7:15.
at 7:15.
7:15.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. All right, the next hearing is scheduled at 7:15. We cannot start the hearing early, so we do have a few minutes here. If you want to take up the minutes, that's fine. I'm going to have to abstain because I didn't have time to look at them. But,
Do we want to hold them over to the next meeting so everybody can review them and give their comments?
You didn't do your holiday reading yet?
Oh, I have mine up.
We have 10 minutes till we can.
there's too much.
It's supposed to be family time.
Did you all look at them, or what do you want to do?
I did look at them,
Just
but
to see y'all.
if everybody hasn't seen them, there's no sense in taking them.
Dig in.
Hello, Mr. Olson.
Hello, Ms. Weston. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I like your scarf.
Thank you very
It's
much.
very pretty and festive for the new year.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have anything other than minutes to talk about?
And Scott?
No.
So, made small talk already. Check the
There's a
list.
fine job of that.
I did have a quick question. Did you advertise to reopen the public hearings for Mass DOT?
Oh, yes.
So they are, it is a
Yeah,
public
yeah.
hearing tonight?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, I wasn't clear.
Yeah,
Since we
although
hadn't
they
gotten
came
them.
in, remember, they of course don't
Right.
have to send out the
Right,
notices, but I did advertise, and they paid for it.
okay. And you didn't have to notify the abutters? So
No.
you did not, okay.
No,
Okay. All right, just wasn't clear.
yep.
I'll make a motion that we take a recess till 7:15.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Returning to open session from our recess. Next item on the agenda is a 7:15 continued public hearing for the town of Auburn relative to the new Auburn Middle School at 5 and 7 West Street and 780 Southbridge Street. Is there a motion to reopen?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. The hearing is reopened. Gentlemen,
You're up.
you're up.
Evening, everybody. Matt Broussard Design and Engineering, here with Eric Moore, Lamar Pagano Architects, and some other members of the project team. Just to kind of refresh everybody's memory about where we are in the process. The project materials had been out for a couple rounds of peer review with Jeff Walsh at Graves Engineering. On the 6th, he issued a follow-up comment letter that, aside from a couple of issues which we can discuss, pretty much is concurring with the design that we presented, methodologies, results, etc. So again, I can do one of a couple of things. I can kind of run through the stormwater system again, kind of go over what the final design wound up including, and then talk about the couple of items that Jeff has still pointed out that
Yeah, I think that would be.
unless you'd rather.
No, I think that would be a good approach. But I understand from watching the planning board meeting last night that there have been some changes in the plan.
There haven't really been any changes
No, but in the
with regard
stormwater.
to the stormwater. That's kind of been evolving on its own track.
Right. Yep.
So, if you recall, originally the project was presented with an avoidance of recharge of pavement runoff.
Right.
That was superseded by DEP directive. So the way the final system will function, the roof runoff and the pavement runoff are still segregated into two separate infiltration systems. All the pavement from almost the entire site is collected in a standard curb and gutter closed pipe collection system. It's routed through a treatment chamber here, and also routed through a subsurface detention / infiltration field located under this parking lot. It's a fairly sizable field, and one of the reasons for that is, I think, as we've discussed previously, pretty much the entire site are type A soils. So there's a large amount of infiltration that occurs on the site now, and that's really the only practical way we were able to meet peak runoff requirements in addition to the infiltration requirements for the stormwater standards. The entire roof is collected by a couple of roof drains directed to this field over here, which has an overflow discharge that discharges toward this isolated wetland on this part of the site. This field was actually designed for a zero discharge, basically for all storm events through 100-year storm, because of the very small amount of water that flows toward this isolated wetland by surface runoff under existing conditions. So this is pretty much, this is really an emergency overflow. If there's ever any flow coming out of that line, it probably indicates that there's a problem with the field. We also added a third small infiltration field located under the main access drive. That was primarily added toward the end of the iterative design that was done for the system to handle peak flow reduction for this front area, the portion of the site that's not tributary to this field up here due to topographical constraints. So this field actually does a couple of things. It manages peak discharge, but also, which is different from the original design, it also picks up the runoff from the existing school building and fire department parking lot and roof drain discharge. Previously, this just picked up in a standard catch basin and was intended to just be routed through the piping system to the outlet. So we kind of took advantage of the fact that we needed to provide a little bit more peak flow reduction. So now this existing parking lot will be treated prior to discharge, whereas before it was just going to be straight discharge to the well.
So where does it goes down to that, like head wall down there or something?
Right.
Number 3?
Both of these fields are directed through what was an existing piping and discharge system, which is being completely replaced. under the fire department training area. It's actually impossible to see from where you're sitting, but this is actually the existing head wall right here.
Okay.
That's being completely taken out, and a larger, more productive riprap sump area is being
Yeah,
installed
okay.
for energy dissipation. So that's how the system functions. It's actually fairly simple. We meet all the DEP stormwater standards, by a fairly substantial margin. Particularly, the infiltration requirements were way above what the requirement is. So the other issue that we had been discussing with Mr. Walsh was the status of the floodplain associated with Dark Brook Reservoir. We went back and forth with some materials to his office, and our basic contention was that because Dark Brook Reservoir is a controlled water body, has a known discharge elevation, which is several feet below, the FEMA listed floodplain limit. We kind of presented a qualitative argument to that effect that Jeff concurred with. He suggested it might be a good idea for us to provide some additional calculations. Our response to that was that we didn't feel it was warranted to do a complete floodplain study of that area. So what we did instead was to make some very conservative assumptions about the watershed conditions, and returned a fairly basic hydrologic calculation for the reservoir watershed under the 100-year storm event. And again, making some very basic assumptions in a conservative direction in terms of the results of those calculations. And those were submitted to Jeff. He took a look at them, and he concurred with the results and thinks it was a reasonable approach. So the result of that back and forth was that we both kind of feel like the elevation 613 is a fairly reasonable and conservative number to establish for the floodplain in that area. And it's kind of right around, it matches up fairly closely with the anecdotal information for the water levels in the reservoir.
So can you give me an example of where that elevation is on your map?
Yeah, I can actually have a copy of the grading plan in here, which has that sketched out on it.
You're saying that's the level of Dark Brook Reservoir, 613?
That's the level of Dark Brook Reservoir under a 100-year storm event,
Okay.
flooding event.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you and Jeff Walsh come to that conclusion after he wrote this letter of January 6th? Because I didn't read what he wrote in here. I didn't read that part, unless it was subsequent to where I read. That wasn't a discussion I saw about the floodplain. I was going to ask you about the floodplain.
Yeah, I believe it's on item 15.
Do we have documentation? I haven't. Do we have something? Can you give us whatever you gave them? Documentation?
It will be submitted for the file. But if you look at item number 15 in his January 6th letter, he references the calculations that we submitted to his office. If you want, I can.
Okay, we're going to need something for the file, though.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the idea was at the conclusion of this process and the planning board process, there'd be one set of documents that would be distributed to both boards for the record. So do you want me to go over his response to that?
No, that's
item?
fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
So not, I'm just
Okay,
wondering where
so-
that line is.
So on this map, the green line is the delineated wetland.
Okay.
The blue line here is elevation 613.
Okay.
So you can see there is this one section of the site. There is activity occurring within that area. All right. And just
It's downgrade from almost everything else, basically.
it is, and this is I just actually did a real quick blow up of this area, and I know it's really tiny, but I did a real quick volume calculation for the storage change. So this is a blow up of that entry. This red area right here is the existing head wall, which is being removed. the red lines are the existing contours, and the blue lines are the proposed in that area. So it actually winds up with a very, very small,
So
it's
it's
six
basically-
6 yards of increased storage,
The elevation of the head wall is where the 100 years is.
pretty much. It's
Basically.
and that's being pulled back. This is going to be excavated, and
Okay.
that's that sump that we were talking about. So it's actually a net gain, but it's, I mean, in terms of the reservoir storage, it's essentially, non-impact.
Dan, can you maybe help him as he's trying to flip it
No,
down?
it's okay. The only other item that Jeff brought up that still needs to be addressed. Is that due to the timing of the addition of this field, we actually need to do an additional test pit in this area just to confirm the soil type here. But relative to the fairly extensive boring program that was done and the additional test pits that were done in all the other areas of the site, the soils are very uniform across the entire site. And, it's in my opinion, it's basically a formality that we'll take care of in the next couple of weeks. It hasn't been able to get done just because of the weather and the holidays, etc. But in terms of groundwater, the system that's designed here is actually above the surface elevation of the fire department training area, and there are no water issues there, so we're not anticipating there's a groundwater issue. Again, the soil type, this entire side of the site is uniformly sand and gravel. So
Very well drained.
yeah, so that's that's the assumption that was made for it, but that will be done to confirm it. It just hasn't been completed yet. Other than that, I think we're pretty much wrapped up with Jeff's review. So, and he'll obviously be copied with the same final document set that goes to the commission and to the planning board for his file as well. So if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
There was one other thing that he brought up on page 5 or 7, I believe it is, relative to bordering land subject to flooding. It was not addressed as part of the ORAD process, the NRAD process. I don't know if we missed it or what, but I didn't know if you had taken the bordering land subject to flooding. He talks about it at the top of page 5.
Right. That's,
Of the January 6th report, because it wasn't addressed in the
right.
NRAD process.
He was just saying that the floodplain delineation
Yep.
was not included as part
Right.
of the NRAD.
Right.
So that'll be established as part of
Right,
this
he's
notice
got
of
it
intent
addressed in
decision.
two different areas.
Right.
Right. So we're just going to handle it through this process.
It's the commission's discretion to make a determination that the floodplain designation is reasonable.
Right.
Questions? No? None?
No.
This side of the table? Is there any public comment? Are there any motions?
I'll second that.
It sounded more like a question than a statement, Mr. Olson.
Just to throw them out, see if anyone's second.
I just did.
All right, it's on the table.
Before we close, I was watching the planning board meeting last evening. Although I know you're anxious to wrap everything up and you're going to get your bid specs out and all that stuff, if things change with the planning board that affect us, you're going to have to file for an amendment on your order of conditions.
That's understood.
Okay, just so you know. It
And-
sounds
and-
like there are a
and
lot of
or it could-
issues.
I mean, there could be if there are other
Right.
off-site work that gets,
Mitigation,
that
right.
could even be a separate
A
filing.
separate
so-
filing, right.
Right.
So I just wanted to,
No,
because
appreciate
there
that.
could be a need for an amendment
Yep,
if something changes.
sure.
Okay. All right, then, there's a motion to close, there's a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheila, do you have, did you get a file number for the school budget?
Oh, yes, I did, yep. 0711.
Oh, 711? Okay.
Our presentation materials.
We're gonna wait on the minutes until the next meeting, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay.
I
Ian,
wanted to read them.
Ian Carpenter told me about a phone call he had this evening, maybe you'd like to share with the board.
A member of the public contacted me yesterday and just asked when we do special conditions, he wanted them read. I said I would bring it up to the board if they wanted to do it.
I know the last time we met, I did read it to the record.
Well, he
The
wants
entire, right, the entire
condition.
con.
So you're just saying special condition 5, 7, and 10?
He wants to know what special conditions.
He wants, he's,
Why can't we just scan it and post it on our website?
well, that's what I was
That's
kind
probably
of,
gonna make the most sense instead of because then we'd have to do that at every single meeting
right.
Exactly.
for
Every
fairness,
single
and that
order of
I don't
conditions.
think that's gonna work very well.
No, because the whole idea of doing that was to develop a tool to make it easier for us.
And not spend time reading
Right.
it out every
And
time.
not forgetting conditions and.
Do we have the capability?
I thought we'd already done that.
I wasn't listening to
Had
what
it
he
as a
said. I'm
PDF.
sorry.
We want to put this on the web.
Can you
all of
scan
our
documents and post them on our website?
Or if you have a doc file
I'm sure you can,
or PDF, you
On
can.
our website.
on the
When
town's
you print this
website.
out, is this a,
I mean, on the Conservation
Yeah,
Commission
yes,
page,
I
you just
can
have it
have
as a
that put on.
PDF.
Yeah,
I would think you could.
yeah. I think
And then
this
if people
puts the
say
stuff
here,
on.
conditions 2, 5, and 7, they could
Right.
just go look at the
Look at
document
it.
and see
Yeah.
what 2, 5, and 7 was.
does it need a motion to
No, I didn't.
put this on the web? All right.
person-
Yeah, the- the motion
Were
again.
they gonna be, were you going to be issuing, order conditions tonight,
They
or?
do
I don't know, I'm
have,
trying to have one discussion at a time.
they do have a computer I'm aware of. They do have a site issue.
Because not everybody has computers, that was gonna be my,
They do have a site impairment issue, which is why
oh.
the
Oh, it's the
concern
same
was.
person that's asked us before to read the conditions, I know.
But the thing
mean-
is, then we're back to having to read it every meeting.
Right.
See, I mean,
But there must be.
it's awkward because you'd read a condition and then we would say, well, no, that doesn't apply.
I'm not arguing, I'm just bringing it to the
I
board.
know you're not, I understand. I mean, I think,
Unless you just read the conditions, this is the same person that asked for it before. You just read the conditions that are chosen, I mean, if there's 6
Right.
conditions off the list,
sure,
you know,
and I think that's fine.
all right, then that's.
And just, but just post all the special conditions on our page.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, the only other thing is, you have an order of conditions to do tonight, or we can do it at the next meeting, we have 21 days to
Don't we
issue.
have a 7:30 hearing?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we had a 7:30 hearing, I forgot, thank you.
No wonder why.
Well, it's just 7:30 now, so it's done.
Perfect timing.
I'm gonna recuse myself as I have a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
Mind if I join the table?
Of course not.
No.
Just gonna find my materials.
Is it okay to use this one?
Okay, the 7:30 public hearing is for Mass DOT. Relative to a request to amend 2 orders of conditions. One is for work on the Mass Pike Route 90, and one is for work on 290. And we have advertised to reopen the public hearings for both
Yes.
tonight. Abutters were not notified because they are exempt from that requirement, so just the advertisement was placed in the newspaper. So, is there a motion to open?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted, we are open. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Alex Murray. I'm here on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. I work out of our Boston office for the Highway Division. I'm here tonight with Megan Selby. She's an environmental scientist with Vanessa Hangen-Broslin. They're our designer of record for these projects. We were here last year talking about stormwater improvements relative to a highway resurfacing project on the Turnpike, and also also speaking about a standalone stormwater improvement project on 290. We had received an order of conditions. Since then, as we were gearing up and getting ready to award a contract and start building, we had heard from the Auburn Water District. There were some concerns that the proposed infiltration would have adverse effect on town drinking water. We consulted with them, consulted with DEP, both wetlands and drinking water, and have made some modifications to the plans to satisfy everybody's interests. Generally speaking, what the project entails is the installation of a pipe to direct water out of the Zone 1, and then within Zone 2, which comprises much of Auburn, we took steps to line our stormwater features. We put an impermeable liner in them, so they'll still operate as a water quality feature, but they will not allow water into the ground. They will convey it similar to what happens currently. The original proposal was infiltration, and that was in line with the stormwater regulations. However, given the sensitive nature of the wells in Auburn, in their proximity to the highways, and the extensive reach of the Zone 2, everybody seemed to think that this was a wise decision. I'm inclined to agree. So what we have tonight, this shows we have submitted revised plans, and Megan's going to talk a little bit more specifically about impacts near jurisdictional resource areas.
Thank you. So as you can see, I have a copy of the plan set here. This is the I-90 project, which discharges into Dark Brook. I'm sorry if you can see this. So this portion of the project was actually just resurfacing. If we go a little further west, you can see that we have a few locations, and at these locations there's a total of 6 BMPs. We had proposed to originally do 2 bioretention swales and 4 infiltration swales, but as Alex mentioned, 4 of those swales were within the Zone 2, so we replaced those. Now there's 6 bioretention swales, no infiltration swales left within these limits.
So I'm gonna interrupt a little bit. We're maintaining the same footprints. We are making drainage improvements relative to surface water quality at Dark Brook, Kettle Brook, and Leesville Pond. However, we don't want to promote infiltration. That's the long and the short of why we're here tonight.
So this project on I-90 just focuses on Dark Brook, but if we flip to 290, you'll be able to see we're oriented north as this way, and the pike runs along this side. Here we have the 2 Zone 1s, and then the rest of this is within Zone 2. So we propose to switch out any BMP throughout the Zone 2 area, and they're all lined now. There's no more infiltration within this zone. And any BMPs within here have been switched to a pipe that is going to capture and move the stormwater outside of the Zone 1 areas into the Zone 2. So like Alex said for the other project, this project, everything is in the same footprint as was approved prior, with the exception of the pipe, and that's to just get this stormwater out of the wellhead areas. On both of these projects as well, within the Zone 2, any catch basins that are located there are going to be inspected and replaced if they are not deep sunk and hooded on both projects within Zone 2.
So as you might know, in the stormwater regulations, no stormwater BMPs are allowed within a zone 1. It's a unique situation where we have the highway right next to so there's obviously runoff generating surfaces. However, I think the step to shunt the water outside of the zone 1, which is a radius around the wellhead, makes sense. The zone 2 is defined as a larger area. It's the furthest extent of the hydraulic pull should there be 180 days of no recharge. That's the furthest that the well will influence. Generally, infiltration is supported within the Zone 2. However, this is a unique case, and both DEP and Auburn Water thought it best, along with MassDOT, to make these modifications.
So this, for the 290 project, this is actually the northern portion of the project, and we are proposing a very similar redesign on the southern portion. That is still under review right now. But we were hoping to include that under this amendment to limit our taking up more of your time, since the redesign is going to be essentially the same. Anything within a zone 1 will be focused outside the zone 1. Anything within zone 2 will be switched from infiltration to fire retention.
But you don't have that design ready at this time,
We
correct?
do not, but we propose to submit the plans to you as soon as they are complete.
Questions? What are your thoughts about approving an amendment on something that's not proposed, not filed yet?
I'm not happy about that.
Well, it should be noted that the footprint
Will not
footprint
change.
won't change.
Right.
The cross section is what changes.
Gotcha.
So there'll be, we dig just a little bit deeper, put the liner in, and then there's a media. So instead of allowing water to go through the bottom of the basin, it's allowed to infiltrate through the media. It hits the liner at the bottom and leaves the system.
Right.
Could you put in writing what you just said, that your design will include relative to what's going to be addressed in your design in the southern portion?
As far as the southern portion goes, I think that we could provide them
Yeah, we
something
can
like that.
we can do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because at least that way if something, I mean, maybe the board, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. The board might condition it such that if it was anything different than that, then you'd have to do another amendment. But
Yeah, I
if
mean,
it's going to be the same type of thing, the same type of work, with the same type of objective, it would seem that that's what you'd be doing, what you've just represented. But
Yeah, the only redesign we're doing is at the request of the Auburn Water District, and so.
But you anticipate right now that that's the way it's going to go, what you've already stated.
Mhm.
So if it was something other than that, I mean, I can understand your desire to be able to continue to move forward. So that might be a way for the board to consider addressing it, conditioning that if it ended up being something different, then you'd have to ask for another amendment.
Sure.
When do you think that design will be approved?
It's essentially complete.
Undergoing.
Where it's I think I don't want to. It's not happening in my office. It's happening in her office. But in conversations today, it was either being finalized or has been finalized and is undergoing QA/QC.
Okay.
So I would put it in the 2 to 3 week category.
Okay, so we might have it then, maybe not by our next meeting, but certainly by the beginning of February.
I'll tell you what. I think I will push them to have it done for the next meeting.
Okay. I like that.
So would you want to keep the meeting open?
I think I would, just because I would like to see the plans.
Or don't we have the option of waiting to make the amendment? Do we have the 21 days or no for this?
We do.
We do have that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could,
So you wouldn't have to come back. I mean, if you want to submit the plans at that point, we could review them. I don't think you necessarily have to make another presentation. At that point, we can,
Right.
make our amend our order of conditions.
I would say keep the meeting open if you're going to address it that way, because you can't take in any additional testimony
Right.
after you close the hearing.
Correct.
So if you wanted to consider what they were going to submit, so you could answer their request for an amendment all in one brush, then in order to consider that, I think you'd have to keep it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So the work on I-90 could be approved as submitted.
That's a separate
That's all.
order. of
It's a separate order of
conditions.
conditions,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah, we could do that, that's
Okay.
correct.
The work on 290, we have a contractor ready to move. The portion that we have complete is the part of the project north of the turnpike, as shown here. Is that something that we could start on in the next couple weeks, or is that we would have to wait? Would we not?
Well, I guess what we're saying is you can't really have your cake and eat it too.
Understood.
you know?
Understood.
I mean, we can close a public hearing with respect to what you've submitted. And again, I hear what you're saying, and I understand, I think, the changes you're making and the reasons you're making them, but I'm still a little leery about approving something when I haven't seen a plan for it.
Very well.
And procedurally, the requests for the amendments, although the orders are separate, the requests came in together. And I don't know, I didn't see the ad. Did you advertise it?
It's together as one ad.
So one hearing, so
Right.
we have one hearing open for both matters. And I
Right.
don't think procedurally you could close out one tonight and vote on
And leave
one
the other
thing and
open.
leave the other one open. I don't think you could do that
All right.
because of the way it's been advertised.
So I guess the question is, do you think you can get the second design set into us for 290 by the 22nd of January?
I think that'll be the plan.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then we could close the hearing that night and
And
do
to
our,
the
make our
order.
decision that night too.
Should we have a motion to continue this hearing? So
If the applicant agrees.
Oh yeah, I agree. I feel like the choice would be a denial.
Well, you know, you have to do what you have to do, but.
No, I think I think that would work for us. I would request that if at all possible, perhaps we could have an amended order ready to sign for the next hearing.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll vote on it after we close the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, at least we'll sign it.
We
and
generally
Very well.
Usually have to
generally
hear
take
it.
these orders up right after we close the public hearing.
Okay.
we can't just rub the stamp.
Yeah, and then we'll just sign, we'll
Have
sign
the
a
hearing.
signature sheet and still prepare them, but it's hard to know exactly how we would word it ahead of time, you know?
Makes sense.
But we'll close it and we'll make the decision that night.
I usually do them the next day.
Okay.
So do you make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue this hearing until January 22nd
At
at
7:30?
7:30.
I'll second,
7:30 again,
I'll
okay.
second that.
All right, is there any other discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. All right then, so we'll see you in 2 weeks at 7:30.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It's gonna come and get you. All right. Okay, so, the order of conditions on the middle school projects. It's on file.
Oh, boy. I don't know.
What's that first hearing that you have on at the next meeting, Sheila?
The campus.
Oh, the school, the playground.
Right.
Okay.
That's not a definite, but I haven't talked to Joanna.
So we have that, and we have Masad, and we have this DOT one.
Right.
Well, I mean, we have 21 days, but I just, whatever you,
Well, we can certainly do it. I mean, well, I don't know if members of the board like to mull it over. I mean, it's a big project, I know, not to compare the middle school to the high school, but we have the benefit of a consultant for the high school. Although I think we can issue an order of conditions without the benefit of a consultant for the middle school. What do you think?
well, as far as time goes, You know, I don't know if anybody saw the planning board meeting last night, but they are continuing to the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
They have some issues, with
Right.
this offsite mitigation stuff.
Correct.
So if you were to do it at the next meeting, I don't think time-wise it would be an issue.
Correct.
I know they're anxious to get their bid docs out.
Mm-hmm.
I know from watching last night's meeting that they want to have construction underway in March.
Okay.
So they have to get their bid stuff out like
That's
later
cutting
this
it
month, I
short.
guess. Mm-hmm. Very short, very tight. So if you took the 21 days, if you did it at the next meeting, we meet before the planning board does.
Right.
Yeah,
They have a meeting on the 14th, but they continued this to the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's all relevant to offsite mitigation. I mean,
Right.
they made it very clear last night that they don't have a problem with the school as designed. They don't have a problem with the site. They don't seem to have an issue with the building itself. It seems to be the offsite mitigation and the sidewalks widening of West Street.
Oh, but that really has no effect on our
Exactly,
decision.
that's my point.
Yeah.
But I know time-wise, it's a concern for the school committee, the school buildings committee, and certainly the consultant. We do have under the regulations, we do have 21 days. We can do it tonight. We can, whenever.
Well, we
you-
can. I
I
mean,
would say we do it now. I mean, we're not gonna be after that planning board meeting anyway. So what's the,
I mean, I don't have a problem in, I mean, I think the issues have been addressed adequately. I mean, maybe others disagree, but I'm satisfied with what, and the changes that have been made to the
Well, after the reviews, this final,
design.
the last report from Graves, yeah.
Yeah,
Because the initial, when I saw all the inconsistencies,
I understand that. And,
so I was relieved to see this.
and, I was thinking actually, what we want to incorporate Graves' January 6th report.
Absolutely, and I think you should also, when you're doing the special conditions, I think you should put in there asking for the documentation on that floodplain elevation, where they came up,
yeah,
something to document for the file, how that was arrived at.
So we want a copy of their methodology?
Whatever documents were provided to Graves that led Jeff, I don't know how you're going to word it, but
Well,
whatever.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Whatever was submitted to Graves that allowed them to come to that conclusion relative to the floodplain
Floodplain, right.
should be submitted to, I mean, we have the written documentation, we have the end result, but I think we should have the work product.
You want that in our file?
I think so.
Okay, then that's
Yeah,
fine.
duly
Because
documented.
that was the one issue I was kind of grappling with.
Yep.
And I was listening to the gentleman describe how he arrived at that, and it actually made sense to me.
Yeah,
I think it made sense to you
and
too, right?
yeah.
I
I
just,
mean, the
yeah, I
fact
just
that
think
it's-
that we should have the backup for
Okay.
the file, that's all.
That's fine. All right, so I'm ready.
All right, then. And you're going to read the special conditions that you choose, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Okay. With regard to the Auburn Middle School project, I would move to issue a standing order of conditions plus the following special conditions. Number 1, there shall be no storage, maintenance, or refueling of construction equipment or other machinery within the 100-foot buffer zone to wetlands or the 200-foot riparian zone to perennial streams and rivers. Period. Oil-absorbing pads and/or hydrostatic booms shall be stored on site in case of spills or burst hoses. 2, prior to a certificate of compliance being issued, the applicant shall provide an as-built plan prepared by a professional engineer at the same scale as the plan submitted, filed with the notice of intent filing, and is approved by the Conservation Commission. The as-built plan shall indicate the location of all structures within the 100-foot buffer zone, including all replicated wetland resource areas and their respective final grades. 3, assigns a copy of the SOAR conditions as issued by the Conservation Commission shall be on site at all times. Period. Also, individuals performing activities near or within areas under jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act shall familiarize themselves with the conditions herein. Okay, now there's no replication on the site, so 4 does not apply. 5, erosion and sediment control measures will be placed between the work area and the edge of the bordering vegetated wetlands. 7, riprap shall be installed in accordance with the Massachusetts Department of Public Works standards. 8, this order of conditions shall be subject to each and every condition stated herein, period. The failure of the applicant to comply with any conditions here in shall invalidate the order of conditions, render it null and void, and subject the applicant to enforcement actions under the provisions of the Wetland Protection Act and the Auburn Wetlands Bylaw. Period. That's a new one. We have to amend that. 9, there shall be no storage of snow within the 100-foot buffer zone of wetlands. Period. This provision shall survive any issuance of this order of conditions with respect to the subject property. 11, there shall be no dumping of lawn clippings, yard waste, or other deleterious material in the wetland. This provision shall survive any issuance of a certificate of compliance with reference to the subject property. Period. 13, detention, retention, sedimentation, catch basins, or other storm water management structures shall be maintained biannually, every 6 months or every year. Question. That's a question.
I think it should be annually as needed. I mean, you may have more rain than,
Well, that's my point. All right, so why don't we say then that for 13, detention, retention, sedimentation, catch basins, or other stormwater management structures shall be maintained annually or on an as-needed basis depending on conditions. This provision shall survive any issuance of a certificate of compliance with respect to the subject property.
The only thing I understand the way you worded it is at the minimum annually, because you said as needed, and then they may
Yeah.
say it's longer than that.
it must be
At least
maintained
once a year,
at a minimum annually,
if not
or more frequently if needed.
it's-
Okay.
That's the way I would.
Then that's fine. I can read again if you'd like.
Is there any chance the vehicle with the alarm going off belongs to anybody in this room?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
On me, that's what I
No,
checked.
It's been going on
It's
for
very
several minutes
annoying.
now.
It stopped once, but then you started up again.
Battery could die in the cold weather.
It's a sedan.
All right, so shall I read 13 again?
Yeah.
Would you please?
Detention, retention, sedimentation, catch basins, or other stormwater management structures shall be maintained at a minimum on an annual basis or more frequently as conditions require. Period. Thank you. This provision shall survive any issuance of a certificate of compliance with respect to subject property. Period. As an additional special condition, which is not on our list, the applicant shall provide the Conservation Commission with data supporting its determination. Need some help here, folks.
The elevation of the floodplain,
On the
100-year
elevation.
floodplain.
Of the 100-year floodplain elevation for Dark Brook Reservoir.
Very good.
And then finally, this special order of conditions, the order, not a special condition, but the order of conditions shall incorporate by reference the January 6, 2014 letter to the Auburn Planning Board from Graves Engineering Incorporated.
I'll second that.
So
Okay.
that entire letter will be part of the order of
Yes.
conditions.
Yes,
So your motion, Michael, is for the state standard order of conditions,
yes.
plus from our list, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, as you modified it. And you also have a condition relative to the documentation on the elevation of the floodplain.
Great.
And you have the reference to the January 6th letter from Graves.
That's correct.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this? All those in favor?
And
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry. Okay.
All right then.
Sign
Do we have a signature page?
Yes, we do.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Oh, they were still here.
Oh, there, yeah.
Came back in.
1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13.
And then the other two.
Right.
13's modified and the other two.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So you don't need it?
I have it somewhere. I have probably 10 copies of it.
I'll save it for you.
He doesn't show
all right.
up, and,
The next
somebody
one,
has to
right?
do that, Jack.
Okay. Is there anything else for anyone?
What about the enforcement order on
Oh, thank you.
1220? It's still on here. Man,
I'm looking for it. I thought
sorry.
enforcement orders were blank.
It is blank.
Oh.
oh, all right.
Well,
I
you
guess
know
I
what?
have an old
Have you
one.
got the old one? You've got the old
Oh.
one. You got the new one. That's the new one. You've got the old one. I put that on there before I brought it down.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That is still hanging there. We talked to Bill Farady. I guess I don't know what.
Yeah, I thought they were
Right,
gonna be
sent
coming
me-
in with I thought they were coming in with a request to amend, but,
Oh, well, I'll just leave it on there.
yeah.
The new
fine.
agenda with the stamp from the town
Okay.
clerk has got that on it.
It does.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, these are our regulations as edited from our meeting.
Yes.
Excellent.
Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
And is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. We are adjourned.
Aye, aye.